government finally issues statement concerning Sowore drama. The drama, which took place at the Federal High Court in Abuja on December 6th, leading to the rearrest of Omoyele Sowore by officers of the Department of State Services (DSS) while court session was going on, has elicited a reaction from the UK government. The British High Commission in Nigeria tweeted that it is following Showore's detention closely, saying, "As we celebrate #Human Rights Day, we encourage all political, state and non-state actors to uphold the ideas set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, signed 71 years ago today. We are following closely to the continued detention of #Sowore. Respect for the rule of law and free and responsible speech is fundamental for #democracy. The UK is committed to defending and strengthening human rights worldwide, and as we conclude #16 Days of Activism 2019, working to end gender-based violence." Meanwhile, US declares support for human rights activists. Amid growing cases of human rights violations by governments around the world, both United Nations and United States have thrown their weight behind human rights activists, declaring their support for the activist struggles for the dignity of human persons. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Tuesday that UN would stand with young activists, even as United States Secretary of State Michael Pompeo said US would remain staunch supporter of those who strive for their rights and human dignity. He added that every government derived its moral authority by its willingness to protect the rights and freedom enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1948. Guterres and Pompeo spoke separately on the occasion of Human Rights Day, while the UN Secretary General made his remarks at the body's New York headquarters at a program titled Youth Standing Up for Human Rights. The US Secretary of State's speech was contained in a statement from the US Department of State, issued by the Office of the Spokesperson and made available to the media, titled International Human Rights Day. The UN scribe noted that the young activists had been at the forefront of agitations against human rights abuses in their different countries. "We express our support for those who are committed to protecting and promoting human rights, and we highlight where governments and others are falling short. To the brave young human rights activists here today, I say the United Nations stands with you, and I stand with you," said the Secretary General. He pointed out that the occasion was to celebrate the role of young people in advancing and protecting human rights. "As someone who grew up under a dictatorship, I am deeply inspired by the energy and passion young people bring to the struggle for human rights. I know young people can lead movements that change hearts and minds and make history. This is an indelible part of my own past." Throughout history and across the world, young people have been at the forefront of standing up for what is right, from Harriet Tubman's anti-slavery activism to the White Rose campaign in Nazi Germany. Young people have risked everything to struggle against oppression and discrimination and affirm fundamental rights and freedoms. They have played a key role in the civil rights movement, the anti-apartheid movement, the women's rights movement, and many anti-colonial and liberation struggles. Today, young human rights leaders are continuing this tradition. They are powerful torchbearers for a better future, and we all owe them our support. Today, on Human Rights Day, we reaffirm fundamental human rights and celebrate the wisdom and legacy and Eleanor Roosevelt and all those involved in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights more than 70 years ago. The Universal Declaration established a special responsibility for the United Nations to advance all rights, civil, cultural, economic, political, and social for all people. Human rights are the core of the UN and inform all our work. Since the adoption of the Universal Declaration, there has been massive progress. Billions of people around the world live safer, longer lives with access to opportunities and hope for a better future. There is greater awareness of the values and commitments and underlie our rights and an understanding of their universal nature. We have built on the success of the Universal Declaration with additional covenants and a robust treaty-based system of international law. But there is much more to do. There is still an enormous gap between the Universal Declaration and the situation in countries around the world. Human rights violations, misogyny and exclusion and widespread and systematic. Inequality is growing and hate speech is poisoning public debate. The climate crisis, urbanization, and endless conflicts deny millions of people their fundamental rights and freedom. Our shared human values offer a way through, and once again, young people are in the lead. Everywhere, they are marching against corruption, repression, and inequality, and for human rights and human dignity. Young people are on the front lines of action against the climate emergency, which poses a serious threat to human rights and to human life. Young women are at the forefront, making the link between the denial of their rights and rising populism, xenophobia, and discrimination of all kinds. Young people are rightly demanding that government listen to them and respect them. Their voices must be heard. We regularly hear about the repression of human rights defenders. Recently, several young activists who work closely with the United Nations reported that they or their family members experienced retaliation and even detention for speaking out. This reflects a broader trend that is completely unacceptable. The work of human rights defenders, young and old, is essential to all our efforts for peace and for inclusive and sustainable development. They must be protected and supported. I salute them and I urge the government to pay attention, to engage, to invest in progress and hope, said UN Secretary General. On his part, Secretary Pompeo took a swipe at China, Iran, Syria, and Venezuela for their Syria human rights violations. Indeed, it is widely recognized that a government's moral authority is derived in large measure by its willingness to protect the rights and freedoms enumerated in the human rights arrays. Sadly, not all nations have demonstrated this willingness. The Chinese government continues to repress members of religious and ethnic minority groups and elsewhere, and well as to undermine the freedoms guaranteed to Hong Kongers under the Sino-British Joint Declaration and the Basic Law. The regimes in Iran, Syria, and Venezuela commit gross human rights violations every day that shock the conscience. In order for countries such as China, Iran, Syria, and Venezuela to regain moral authority in the eyes of freedom-loving nations, they must rededicate themselves to protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms. Today, we celebrate the universal rights outlined in the UDHR and recommit ourselves to protecting and promoting these fundamental, universal, and essential freedoms. The United States will always remain a staunch supporter of those who strive for their unalienable rights and human dignity, said Secretary Pompeo. So guys, it is still the same thing, and that is what we are even experiencing even as a nation. That is what we are battling with in Nigeria. Violation of human rights. Because disobedience to court order is the order of the day. But quickly we've heard that the federal government is trying to come together and, dialogue with people who are agitating so that to curb the agitations. They know what to do. Just like I believe that if Nigeria wants to turn to a developed country today, it's not a rocket science at all. The problem is that the political way to do this is what is lacking in the lives of all these our politicians. Greed, selfishness. It takes nothing. We have everything. Whatever you want to talk about, whether the human resources and natural resources, we have them in abundance. But what do? No, they are always concerned about their family, their political friends, and people who are affiliated to them in one way or the other. But to have the love for the general masses, they don't have it. Forget all these rhetorics they come to sing. If Nigeria wants to be better today, it doesn't take anything, but we have a principalities and power, human being in human form. Some people have said, as far as they are concerned, they will continue to be there and they will continue to see people suffering. But at the end of the day, it's going to affect them. It's going to come back. It's going to haunt them. But they won't know that. So it is better for them to release, not only to dialogue with people who are agitating, but people who they've arrested illegally, people who are in their custody, people they are supposed to have released based on court orders. We have many of them. We know them. They should release them, and that is when Nigerians will take them serious. All this dialogue of a thing is not only going to help matter, but let them do the needful. That is the one thing we need to do. They need to do now. Release all these people. And they have said everyone, and this Sowore and the rest people, they've named them that they are prisoners of conscience. And from the angle of the world, nobody's looking at them. That maybe somebody wants to unseat any government. No, it's far from that, because they know the truth. It is our country that's just trying to cover up everything, just want to frame a lot of things. Like, if you have a good evidence against those who you are arrested, why can't you release them and let them face their cases in court? You are trying to hold them. You don't want the court case to continue. So where does that leave you? So they need to do the needful and respect human rights. And as human rights, whatever is being celebrated today, and it's gaining momentum for those who have been in the custody of governments illegally. So guys, that is just the stand of these countries, most especially UK. They have been watching this whole case, closely, according to what they said. And I was just laughing when Loretta Onoche was trying to educate the US lawmaker that in case he does not know what has been happening, trying to explain what has been happening from the day Sowore was arrested and what led to what. And people were just laughing at him. You think they don't know what has been happening? And the same thing, because they have their embassies in a country, so you don't need to tell them. And it's a confirmation that these people are watching closely. They know what is happening. All these stories that their spokesperson have been talking here and there, they know that they are lying. They know what is obtainable. They know what is happening. So guys, that is just my own take. Leave your comments below and let's have your take. Thank you very much. Bye.